thrown out into the cold night by the woman she once called family. A broken girl with nothing left but tears makes one small choice that changes her destiny forever. She helps a stranger she believes is helpless, never knowing he's a billionaire whose secret will turn her pain into a life beyond her wildest dreams. The rain fell softly that night, the kind of rain that soaked into clothes without making a sound, as if the sky itself was ashamed of what was happening below. Aisha stood barefoot on the front steps of the only house she had ever called home, her thin sweater clutched tightly around her shoulders. The door slammed shut behind her with a final, cruel echo that still rang in her ears. "Don't come back," her stepmother's voice had snapped moments earlier. "You are not my responsibility anymore." Aisha was only 18, but her eyes carried the exhaustion of someone much older. Her father had died 3 years ago, and with him had gone the only shield she had against this woman's bitterness. At first, her stepmother had pretended to care. She smiled for neighbors, cooked warm meals when people were watching, and spoke gently when others were around. But behind closed doors, the house had turned cold. Tonight was the breaking point. "I didn't steal anything," Aisha had whispered, her voice shaking as she stood in the living room earlier. "I swear on my father's life." Her stepmother's eyes were sharp and unforgiving. "Lies. You've always been a burden. I should have sent you away long ago." Aisha remembered looking at the framed photo of her father on the wall. He was smiling, unaware of the cruelty that would fill his home after his death. She wanted to beg, to fall at her stepmother's feet, but something inside her broke instead. Now, standing outside in the darkness, she realized she had been thrown out with nothing. No phone, no money, no bag, just the clothes on her body and a heart shattered into pieces. The house lights turned off one by one. The street was empty. Aisha took a step forward, then another, not knowing where she was going. Each step felt heavier than the last. Her stomach growled painfully, reminding her she hadn't eaten since morning. The rain mixed with her tears, and she wondered if anyone passing by would even notice the difference. She walked until her legs burned and her feet ached from the cold pavement. Eventually, she reached a small bus stop shelter and collapsed onto the bench inside. She hugged her knees, shaking, trying to remember something, anything, that could save her. But there was nothing. "I didn't do anything wrong," she whispered to herself, over and over, as if saying it enough times might make it true again. The night stretched endlessly. Cars passed without slowing. People hurried by, avoiding eye contact. To them, she was just another homeless girl, another sad story they didn't have time for. As dawn approached, hunger became unbearable. Her head felt light, her vision blurry. When the rain finally stopped, the silence felt louder than the storm had been. Aisha stood up slowly, determined to keep moving. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew she couldn't stay still. Staying still meant giving up, and despite everything, she wasn't ready to disappear. She walked toward the city center, guided by instinct more than logic. That's when she saw him. A man sat on the edge of the sidewalk near a closed cafe, his back against the wall. His clothes were worn, his hair messy, and his face pale with pain. One hand clutched his side, and his eyes were closed tightly, as if he were trying to hold himself together. Aisha hesitated. She had nothing. No food. No money. No shelter. Helping someone else felt impossible when she herself was barely standing. She took a step past him, then stopped. Her father's voice echoed in her mind, gentle and warm. "Kindness costs nothing, my little star." She turned back. Are you okay?" she asked softly. The man opened his eyes slowly. They were dark, deep, and filled with exhaustion. He tried to smile but failed. I will be, he said quietly. Just need a moment. She noticed the blood seeping through his shirt near his ribs. Her heart skipped. You're hurt. It's nothing, he replied, though his voice betrayed him. Aisha swallowed her fear. She tore a strip from the edge of her sweater, ignoring the cold, and knelt beside him. Let me help, she said. As she gently pressed the cloth against his wound, neither of them knew that this small act, this single moment of compassion, was about to change both their lives forever. The man winced as Aisha pressed the cloth tighter, but he didn't pull away. Instead, he watched her with quiet curiosity, as if trying to understand why someone who looked so tired and broken herself would stop to help him. You don't have to do this, he said gently. You look like you need help more than I do. Aisha gave a weak smile. Maybe, she replied, but I know how it feels when no one stops. She tied the makeshift bandage as securely as she could. Her hands trembled from the cold, but her movements were careful. When she was done, she sat back on her heels, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. What's your name? The man asked. Aisha, she said. And yours? He hesitated for just a second. Adam. It wasn't his real name, but she didn't know that. They sat in silence for a moment, the early morning air heavy with uncertainty. Finally, Aisha stood up. There's a shelter a few blocks from here, she said. They might help you. Adam shook his head slowly. I'll manage. Thank you, really. Aisha nodded and turned to leave, but before she could take more than a few steps, her knees buckled. The world spun, and she collapsed to the ground. Hey! Adam reached out, pain forgotten as he caught her arm. What's wrong? I'm fine, she murmured, though her body betrayed her. You're starving, he said, his voice firm now. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a few crumpled bills. Take this. Please. Aisha stared at the money as if it were a miracle. I can't. You can, he interrupted softly. You helped me. Let me help you. Her eyes filled with tears as she accepted it. Thank you. She found a small bakery opening for the morning shift and bought the cheapest bread she could. She returned and split it with him, without a second thought. Adam watched her closely as she ate, noticing how she tried to hide her hunger, taking small bites as if afraid the food might disappear. Where are you going now? He asked. I don't know, she admitted. I'll figure it out. Adam nodded slowly, as if making a decision. There's a place nearby where I'm staying, he said carefully. It's not much, but it's warm. Aisha hesitated. Every warning she'd ever heard screamed in her mind. But something about his eyes felt honest. Safe. Okay, she said quietly. The place turned out to be an old apartment building under renovation. Adam had a small room with a mattress on the floor and a kettle. It wasn't comfortable, but it was shelter. Over the next few days, an unusual bond formed between them. Aisha cleaned nearby cafes in exchange for leftover food. Adam rested and slowly healed, always thanking her, always watching her with that same thoughtful gaze. You're too kind for this world, he told her one evening. She laughed softly. This world hasn't been kind to me. Still, she helped him without question. She didn't know that Adam wasn't homeless at all. She didn't know that he was a billionaire who had gone undercover after a betrayal within his own company, seeking to understand life from the ground up. And Adam didn't tell her. Because for the first time in his life, someone saw him not for his power or wealth, but for who he was. Aisha's first day at the new job felt unreal, like she had stepped into someone else's life by mistake. The building itself was tall and made of glass, reflecting the skies so clearly that it almost hurt to look at. She stood outside for a long moment, clutching the simple folder Adam had given her, her heart pounding loudly in her ears. You can do this, she whispered to herself. Inside, everything was quiet and polished. People moved with purpose, their clothes neat, their expressions serious. Aisha felt small, painfully aware of her worn shoes and nervous hands. When she sat for the interview, she answered honestly, her voice shaking at first but growing steadier as she spoke about her willingness to work hard, to learn, to prove herself. The interviewer studied her carefully, then smiled. "We'll give you a chance," he said. A chance. That single word felt heavier than gold. When she left the building, Adam was waiting across the street, leaning against a wall like it was the most natural thing in the world. He didn't ask how it went. He just looked at her face and smiled. "You got it," he said. Aisha laughed, a sound so light it surprised even her. "How did you know?" "Because people like you don't get noticed often," he replied softly. "But when they do, it changes everything." The job wasn't easy. She started at the bottom, doing small tasks, organizing files, cleaning desks after hours. But Aisha worked with the same determination she had used to survive on the streets. She arrived early and left late. She listened more than she spoke. Slowly, people began to trust her. At night, she returned to the small room Adam was staying in. They shared simple meals, talking about nothing and everything. Sometimes they laughed. Sometimes they sat in silence, a comfortable silence that felt safe. "You don't talk much about your past," Aisha said one evening. Adam looked down at his hands. "Neither do you." She nodded. Some wounds didn't need words. Weeks passed, and something inside Aisha began to heal. She no longer woke up shaking from nightmares of being thrown into the night. She started to believe that maybe her life wasn't over. Maybe it was just beginning. One afternoon, she was called into a meeting unexpectedly. Her heart raced as she entered the room, expecting criticism. Instead, her manager looked at her with approval. "You've been doing excellent work," he said. "We'd like to move you to a better position." Aisha felt tears burn behind her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. When she told Adam later, he hugged her gently, careful of his healing side. "I'm proud of you," he said. She pulled back slightly, surprised by how much his words meant to her. "I wouldn't be here without you." Adam smiled, but there was something thoughtful behind his eyes, something he seemed to be holding back. As Aisha's confidence grew, so did her curiosity. She noticed things about Adam that didn't quite add up. The way he spoke on the phone sometimes, his calm authority. The expensive watch he never wore openly. The respect certain people showed him when they thought she wasn't looking. "Who are you really?" she asked him one night, half joking. He met her gaze, serious now. "Someone who needed to disappear for a while." She didn't push. Trust went both ways. One evening, Adam didn't return to the room. Hours passed. Aisha's worry grew until she could barely breathe. Finally, a sleek black car pulled up outside the building. Adam stepped out, no longer limping, dressed in a sharp suit that seemed to change the way he stood. Aisha froze. He walked toward her slowly. "I owe you the truth," he said quietly. Inside, he told her everything. About the company, the billions, the betrayal that had driven him to hide his identity and live among strangers. He spoke without pride, without drama, just honesty. Aisha listened in stunned silence. "So, you were never homeless," she finally said. "I was lonely," he replied, "and lost. Until you stopped for me." Tears slid down her cheeks. "All this time, I never lied about who I am inside," Adam said. "But I understand if you're angry." She stood up, walking toward the window, her thoughts racing. Then she turned back to him. "I don't care about your money," she said. "I care that you treated me like a human being when no one else did." Relief washed over his face. From that moment, everything changed, but not the way Aisha feared. Adam didn't shower her with luxury right away. Instead, he gave her choices. Education, growth, respect. And love, slow, patient, real. The girl who had once slept on a cold bench now stood on the edge of a future she never imagined. And somewhere far away, a cruel stepmother was about to learn that kindness, once given, has a way of returning, stronger than revenge. The days after Adam revealed the truth felt strangely quiet, as if the world had taken a deep breath and was waiting to see what Aisha would do next. She expected her life to suddenly explode into luxury, flashing lights, and attention, but Adam was careful. He didn't want to overwhelm her. More importantly, he didn't want her to feel like she owed him anything. "You don't have to change who you are," he told her one evening as they sat on a balcony overlooking the city. "Everything I have, it doesn't define you." Aisha looked out at the lights below, remembering the nights she had walked those same streets hungry and afraid. "I don't want to forget who I was," she said softly. "If I do, I'll lose myself." Adam nodded, respect shining in his eyes. "That's exactly why I believe in you." He helped her move into a modest apartment near her workplace, insisting it be her choice. For the first time in her life, Aisha had a door she could lock, a bed that was hers, and a kitchen where she could cook without fear of being shouted at. The first night, there, she sat on the floor and cried, not from pain, but from relief. At work, her progress continued. She enrolled in evening classes, something she had once dreamed of, but never thought possible. She studied late into the night, determined to make something of the opportunity she had been given. Adam never interfered, never used his influence to push her forward unfairly. If anything, he stayed invisible. Their relationship grew slowly, built on conversations, shared meals, and quiet understanding. Sometimes they laughed like children. Sometimes they argued, learning each other's fears and boundaries. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. One afternoon, Aisha received a message that made her hands shake. It was from an old neighbor. "Your stepmother is asking about you. She says she wants to talk." For a long time, Aisha stared at the screen. Memories flooded back. The shouting, the cold looks, the night she was thrown out like trash. Her chest tightened. Adam noticed her silence. "What is it?" "She wants to see me," Aisha said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to," he replied immediately. "No one has the right to hurt you again." Aisha closed her eyes. "I know, but I think I need to." They drove to the old neighborhood a few days later. As the car slowed in front of the house, Aisha's heart raced. The place looked smaller than she remembered. The paint was peeling, the gate rusted. It no longer felt like a prison, but the scars were still there. She stepped out of the car on her own. The door opened slowly. Her stepmother stood there, eyes widening in disbelief. Gone was the sharp confidence. Her clothes were plain, her face lined with stress. "Aisha," she said, unsure. "Yes," Aisha replied calmly. For a moment, her stepmother couldn't speak. Then her gaze shifted to the car, to Adam standing a short distance away. I didn't know where you went," the woman stammered. "Things have been hard." Aisha almost laughed at the irony. "You threw me out with nothing," Aisha said, her voice steady. In the middle of the night, her stepmother's shoulders slumped. "I was angry. I didn't mean for it to go that far." "But it did," Aisha replied. "And I survived." The woman's eyes filled with tears, not of guilt, but of regret for herself. She had lost her job. The house was nearly gone. People who once respected her no longer came around. "I heard you're doing well," she said quietly. "I thought maybe you could help." There it was. Aisha took a deep breath. For a brief moment, she imagined turning away, letting karma finish its work. But then she remembered the girl she used to be, the one who still believed in kindness, even when the world didn't deserve it. "I won't give you money," Aisha said. And I won't forget what you did. Her stepmother flinched. But I forgive you, Aisha continued. Not for you. For me. Tears streamed down the woman's face as Aisha turned and walked back toward the car. She didn't look back. As they drove away, Adam reached for her hand. That was brave, he said. Aisha squeezed his fingers, her heart finally feeling light. I'm free now. That night, standing on her balcony once more, Aisha realized something important. Her life had changed because she met a billionaire. It had changed because she chose kindness when she had nothing left. And the world, slowly but surely, had answered back. The morning sun poured through the curtains of Aisha's apartment, warming the room with a gentle glow. She stood by the window, watching the city wake up, feeling a calm she had never known before. For the first time in her life, the future didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a promise. Adam joined her, handing her a cup of tea just the way she liked it. You're smiling in your sleep, he said softly. Aisha laughed quietly. I think my heart is finally resting. Life moved forward, steady and meaningful. Aisha completed her studies with distinction, surprising even herself with how far she had come. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was growing. Her confidence shone in meetings, her ideas respected, her voice heard. People listened when she spoke, not because of who stood beside her, but because of who she had become. Adam remained her strongest support, but he never stood in her shadow. When the board of his company eventually learned about Aisha, they were curious, cautious, even skeptical. Adam made one thing clear. She is not here because of me, he said firmly. She is here because she deserves to be. And she proved it. As months passed, Aisha began working on a project close to her heart, an initiative to help young girls who had been abandoned, abused, or thrown out just as she had been. Shelters, education programs, counseling. She poured her pain into something powerful. One evening, as she stood in a small shelter speaking to a group of frightened girls, her voice trembled with emotion. I was once where you are, she told them. I felt invisible. But your story does not end here. Some of the girls cried. Others smiled for the first time in weeks. In that moment, Aisha knew her suffering had not been meaningless. News of her work spread quietly at first, then louder. People admired her, not as a billionaire's partner, but as a woman of strength and compassion. Interviews followed, awards, recognition she never sought. And somewhere far away, in a small, fading house, her stepmother watched these stories on television. Each headline felt like a mirror reflecting her own cruelty back at her. The daughter she had discarded had become everything she never could. One afternoon, Adam took Aisha to a quiet garden outside the city. The air was soft, the flowers in full bloom. He seemed nervous, pacing slightly, which made her smile. What's wrong? She teased. He stopped in front of her, took a deep breath, and knelt down. Aisha, he said, his voice steady but full of emotion. You met me when I had nothing to offer you. You gave me kindness without knowing who I was. I don't want to build a life without you in it. Tears filled her eyes before he even finished. Will you marry me? He asked. Aisha covered her mouth, overwhelmed. All the pain, the nights of hunger, the betrayal, it all led here. She nodded, then laughed through her tears. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. Their wedding was simple and beautiful. No excess, no show, just love, family, and the quiet joy of two souls who had found each other in the darkest place. Aisha walked down the aisle not as a broken girl, but as a woman who had risen from ashes. As she stood beside Adam, she thought of her father. She imagined his smile, his pride. She hoped he could see her now. Years later, Aisha stood once again on a city street, but this time, she wasn't lost. She was opening a new shelter, her name written modestly on the wall. A young girl tugged at her hand and looked up with hope-filled eyes. "Will I be okay?" the girl asked. Aisha knelt beside her and smiled. "Yes," she said gently, "you will." Because she knew the truth now. Kindness, even when it feels small, has the power to change lives. And sometimes, the darkest night is only there to lead you toward the dawn you were always meant to find. And so, a girl who was once thrown into the darkness with nothing but tears became a light for others who were lost. She didn't rise because of wealth, or power, or luck. She rose because she chose kindness when the world showed her cruelty. Her story reminds us that even the smallest act of goodness can open doors we never imagined, and that karma always finds its way back in time. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Let us know in the comments, do you believe kindness can truly change destiny? Until next time, remember, no matter how broken today feels, tomorrow may already be on its way.